For years, Parker Schnabel has been one of the most recognizable faces on Gold Rush. Viewers watched him grow from a determined teenager into a hardened gold miner, carrying enormous expectations on his shoulders. To millions, Parker represented ambition, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of success. But behind the cameras, rumors have followed him quietly for a long time. Rumors about pressure, burnout, behind-the-scenes tensions, and whether the show has taken more than it ever gave back. Now, after years of avoiding direct answers, Parker Schnabel has finally addressed many of those rumors. And what he revealed was not what fans hoped to hear. This wasn't a dramatic outburst or an angry accusation. It was something far more unsettling: calm honesty. Parker spoke about the emotional toll, the constant stress, and the reality of living under nonstop scrutiny while trying to keep a massive operation alive. He admitted that the version of mining viewers see on television barely scratches the surface of the sacrifices being made off-screen. For fans who believed Gold Rush was simply about hard work and big rewards, this confirmation feels heavy, because it suggests that success came at a personal cost Parker may never fully recover from. The pressure, the isolation, the expectations, all of it slowly built up over the years, and once you understand what Parker finally confirmed, you may never watch Gold Rush the same way again. Parker Schnabel's life has been shaped by pressure long before most people even finish school. From a very young age, responsibility was placed on his shoulders, not just to mine gold, but to prove himself worthy of the legacy he inherited. When Gold Rush introduced him to the world, viewers saw confidence, ambition, and a calm determination that felt far beyond his years. What they didn't see was the weight that came with it. As the show grew more popular, so it did expectations. Every season demanded bigger results, higher risks, and more dramatic outcomes. Parker wasn't just mining anymore, he was performing under constant observation. Cameras followed him through victories and failures alike, turning every decision into public judgment. Mistakes that once would have been private lessons became permanent footage, replayed and analyzed by millions. Over time, Parker has quietly acknowledged that this environment changed how he experienced mining. The work itself was already brutal: long hours, unpredictable conditions, and financial risks that could wipe out entire seasons of effort. But adding television pressure created a second battlefield, one that never truly shut off. Even when the machines stopped, the scrutiny and single quotes there were moments when Parker appeared emotionally distant on screen. Fans debated whether he had become cold or arrogant. In reality, that distance may have been survival. When someone is under constant pressure, emotional walls become protection. Parker learned early that showing vulnerability often invited criticism rather than understanding. He has hinted that the show's timeline doesn't always reflect reality. Decisions that take weeks are compressed into minutes. Conversations are edited. Context is lost. And while this is part of television, living inside that version of yourself, one that may not fully represent who you are, can be deeply unsettling. Over time, Parker had to watch a version of himself exist publicly while privately feeling more exhausted than ever. The rumors about burnout didn't come from nowhere. They came from visible changes: less excitement, more tension, and a seriousness that never seemed to lift. Parker was winning gold, but losing something harder to replace: balance. Personal life became nearly impossible to protect. Relationships suffered. Time off became rare. The line between work and identity blurred completely. What Parker finally confirmed, in his own careful way, is that the cost was real. The success wasn't free. Every ounce of gold came with sacrifice: physical, emotional, and mental. He didn't say he regretted it, but he didn't deny the damage either. That honesty alone shook fans who believed the story was only about triumph. This wasn't about blaming the show or rejecting mining. It was about acknowledging reality. Parker grew up in front of the world, and that kind of exposure leaves marks. While others saw opportunity, he carried obligation. While viewers saw entertainment, he lived consequence. Understanding this changes how his journey looks. It's no longer just a story of success. It's a story of endurance, of a young man who carried far more than gold out of the ground, and who is still figuring out what that weight has truly cost him. As the seasons passed, the pressure surrounding Parker Schnabel didn't ease, it intensified. Success brought expectations, and expectations quickly turned into demands. Each year wasn't just about mining efficiently. It was about outperforming the version of himself the audience had already seen. Anything less felt like failure, not just to investors or crew, but to millions watching at home. One of the hardest realities Parker quietly confirmed is how isolating leadership became. On screen, he was the boss, decisive, firm, sometimes harsh. Off-screen, that role came with loneliness few people talk about. Being responsible for people's livelihoods meant every wrong call carried consequences far beyond lost gold. Friendships blurred into professional boundaries, and trust became a fragile thing when stress ruled every conversation. The rumors about behind-the-scenes tension didn't emerge from drama. They grew from exhaustion. Long seasons stripped away patience. Small mistakes became big arguments. Parker has acknowledged that communication suffered during high-pressure moments, not because he lacked respect for his crew, but because there was no room left to decompress. When survival mode takes over, empathy often becomes the first casualty. There were also persistent whispers about whether the show shaped decisions more than mining itself. Parker has addressed this carefully, explaining that while the cameras don't run the operation, their presence undeniably changes the environment. Every success is magnified. Every failure feels heavier. Knowing that setbacks would be broadcast added another layer of stress to an already volatile business. Personal life quietly disappeared in the background. While fans speculated about relationships and emotional distance, Parker was dealing with something simpler but more painful. There was no time to be anything other than a miner. Days blurred into nights. Seasons merged together. Breaks felt undeserved. Over time, the idea of normal life began to feel unfamiliar. What makes Parker's confirmation difficult to hear is not anger, but honesty. He admitted that the grind took more than it gave at times. That there were moments when continuing felt automatic rather than fulfilling. That loving the work didn't protect him from feeling drained by it. These admissions shattered the image of endless determination many fans had projected onto him. Burnout doesn't arrive loudly. It creeps in quietly. It shows up as numbness instead of frustration, routine instead of excitement. Parker's demeanor reflected that shift. The joy of discovery was replaced by obligation. The thrill of risk turned into pressure to deliver. And even victories felt heavy, because the cycle never stopped. Despite everything, Parker didn't walk away. That too says something important. His commitment wasn't fueled by ego, but by responsibility. To his crew. To the legacy he inherited. To the expectations placed on him long before he fully understood them. Walking away would have felt like letting everyone down, including himself. By confirming these struggles, Parker didn't weaken his image. He humanized it. He showed that resilience doesn't mean immunity to exhaustion. That success can coexist with doubt. And that even the strongest work ethic has limits. This part of the story forces viewers to reconsider what they've been watching all these years. Not just a show about gold, but a long-term test of endurance. One that demanded more from Parker Schnabel than anyone ever truly saw. As Parker Schnabel continued pushing forward, something subtle but profound began to change. The grind was no longer just physical or financial. It became emotional. The longer he stayed in that high-pressure environment, the more difficult it became to separate who he was from what the show required him to be. Over time, the cameras didn't just document his life. They became part of it. One of the rumors Parker finally addressed was the idea that he had become detached or indifferent. From the outside, it looked like success had hardened him. In reality, it had exhausted him. When every reaction is recorded and every word can be replayed, silence becomes safer than honesty. Parker learned that showing emotion often led to misinterpretation, so he stopped showing it altogether. This emotional restraint slowly reshaped his relationships. Crew members didn't just work for him. They worked under constant pressure alongside him. Stress affected communication. Small frustrations turned into lasting tension. Parker has acknowledged that there were times when he wasn't the leader he wanted to be, not because he lacked care, but because he lacked energy. Burnout doesn't remove responsibility. It drains the ability to carry it gracefully. The show's success also created an invisible trap. Walking away wasn't simple. With each season, expectations grew heavier. Viewers expected bigger results. Networks expected stronger stories. And Parker felt obligated to deliver, even when his own motivation was running low. He wasn't just continuing for himself anymore. He was continuing because stopping felt impossible. Another quiet confirmation involved control. While Parker maintained authority over mining decisions, the broader structure around him limited flexibility. Filming schedules, seasonal pacing, and constant documentation meant that even personal struggles had nowhere to hide. Privacy became rare. Reflection became rushed. Everything moved forward whether he was ready or not. The rumors about him questioning his future weren't exaggerated. Parker has hinted that there were moments when he wondered how long he could maintain this pace without losing himself entirely. Mining had once been his passion. Now it felt like an obligation wrapped in identity. Walking away from it would mean redefining who he was, something far more frightening than physical exhaustion. Yet what makes this moment significant is not despair, but awareness. Parker didn't collapse under the pressure. He recognized it. And recognition is often the first step toward change. He began speaking more openly about mental strain, balance, and the unseen costs of long-term stress. Not dramatically, but honestly, fans who listened carefully heard something important. Parker wasn't complaining. He was explaining. He wasn't rejecting his journey. He was contextualizing it. He acknowledged the opportunities, the success, and the gratitude he feels while also admitting that the experience took a toll he could no longer ignore. This honesty reframed the narrative. The rumors weren't about scandal or betrayal. They were about sustainability, about what happens when a person grows up under constant pressure and is expected to perform without pause, about the difference between endurance and health. By confirming these truths, Parker changed how his story should be understood. It was never just about gold totals or leadership decisions. It was about a young man navigating adulthood in front of millions, carrying responsibilities most people never face until much later in life, if ever. And as this realization settled in, one question began to matter more than any rumor: not how much gold Parker could mine, but how much longer he could carry the weight without losing himself entirely. By the time Parker Schnabel confirmed the rumors, he had gained a perspective that few outside the operation could understand. Success had brought wealth, recognition, and influence, but it had also brought consequences that weren't always visible on screen. What Parker revealed most of all was the reality of living in a high-pressure environment over many years: the physical strain, the mental toll, and the subtle erosion of personal freedom. Even the most seasoned miners would struggle with the demands Parker faced. Long hours in dangerous conditions, equipment failures, unpredictable markets, and the constant pressure to outperform past seasons left little room for rest or reflection. Parker didn't shy away from acknowledging that carrying the weight of expectations had consequences that went far beyond the gold he extracted. The work never truly stopped, and the mental load never truly eased. Off-screen, Parker's honesty showed another side to him: a young man trying to balance loyalty, ambition, and self-preservation. He confirmed that moments of isolation and tension were real, not scripted drama. Mistakes that viewers assumed were part of a storyline were often the result of genuine exhaustion, human error, and the unpredictable nature of mining. Every decision carried stakes, and the emotional responsibility of those stakes became harder to bear with each passing season. Despite the difficulties, Parker's commitment remained unshaken. He didn't quit because he wanted to prove something to the cameras. He persisted because the work mattered to him and to everyone depending on him. That persistence, however, came at a cost, one he only fully admitted years into the process. Recognizing burnout and pressure as part of his journey doesn't diminish his achievements. It humanizes them. Fans watching now may see a different Parker Schnabel than they did a decade ago. The confident, sometimes stoic miner isn't just performing for the audience, he's carrying the weight of experience, lessons learned, and sacrifices made. Success in this context is not just about gold, but endurance, emotional resilience, and an unwavering commitment to his craft. By confronting the rumors, Parker reframed the conversation about his life on Gold Rush. It's no longer simply about mining results or television drama. It's about the human reality behind the work, the effort, the mental strain, and the price of ambition. His honesty reminds viewers that triumph is often inseparable from struggle. and that even the strongest figures in television reality face unseen battles. Ultimately, Parker Schnabel's story is one of perseverance. He has confirmed what fans suspected but now told the truth about that success, fame, and achievement carry burdens that are rarely seen, and that surviving them requires more than skill. It requires heart, endurance, and courage. While the gold may shine on camera, it is the resilience behind the scenes that defines the man viewers have watched grow up in front of the world.